How do you define democracy? In schools, we've heard a popular description. Democracy is a government of, for, and by the people. Of the people, for the people, by the people. Do you know who said that? Former US President Abraham Lincoln. Those were different times, though. Today, US presidents are accused of war crimes. They deal in conspiracy theories. Today's America is not a guardian of democracy. It's a self-appointed class monitor that has lost its way. America's rise in world politics was not pretty. Wars, interventions, all kinds of illegal operations. America's fall could be even uglier. A Canadian political scientist paints a worrisome picture. Here's what he says. By 2025, American democracy will collapse. There will be civil disobedience, political instability, and by 2030, a dictator will take over, a right-wing authoritarian. That's what the political scientist predicts. And who will that dictator be? Most likely Donald Trump. That's according to this report. He will return to the White House in 2024, and then he will systematically dismantle American democracies. I know it sounds far-fetched. Surely American democracy is stronger than this. Too strong to collapse, perhaps. But let me ask you a few questions. Did you think Donald Trump would win in 2016? Did you think his supporters would attack the US Capitol in 2021? The fact is, anything goes. American democracy has been teetering for a while now. So a complete collapse cannot be ruled out. Most surveys support this. Polarizing elements are creeping into the American mainstream. White nationalists are hijacking politics. And this is the result. 64% Americans feel their democracy is in crisis. 2/3 of all Republicans believe the last presidential election was rigged. And 70% people say America is at risk of failing. 70%. If you put these numbers together, what do you get? What happened on January the 6th last year? Thousands of Trump supporters breached the US Capitol building. They vandalized offices, fired guns. What do most Americans think about this incident? Here's what the Washington Post found. 1 in 3 Americans think violence against their government is justified. 1 in 3. So attacking senators, vandalizing the Congress, all of it is justified. Do you see the trend here? No trust in elections, a deeply polarized society, and normalization of violence. This is how democracy dies. And it's not just limited to the public. Even the US Army is going undemocratic. New reports say extremism and white supremacy is rife in their ranks. And the rules don't help. For instance, soldiers are not banned from joining extremists like the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not saying soldiers are joining KKK. I'm saying it is not banned. Last year, the US was labeled a backsliding democracy. Now, usually Washington loves these little lists. But this time, they were not making it. They were actually on the list. And I would say deservedly so. We saw what happened in January last year. Hundreds of protesters breaching the US Congress. If that was in West Asia or Latin America, what would Washington have done? Probably sent the CIA and a few thousand Marines. For what? To quote-unquote restore democracy. Well, who will restore democracy in Washington, D.C.? Or can the Americans do no wrong? This has been the attitude for decades. Democracy is what America says it is. It tastes like McDonald's. It sounds like rock and roll. And it looks like Hollywood. That was the attitude. We have so many examples of this American arrogance. Just look at Latin America. One report says the US tried to topple regimes 41 times in the 20th century. 41 times in 100 years. They spied on leaders. They funded juntas. They plotted assassinations. Does this sound like a guardian of democracy? I have more examples. Iran. Before 1953, Iran had a democratically elected government. But that's when the US orchestrated a coup. They deposed the prime minister and backed the Shah of Iran. Nobody asked them to. The people of Iran certainly did not. But that's what the United States is for you. They interfere because they can. Same in Afghanistan. The US overthrew the Taliban in 2001. Great. But what was their next step? They imposed their own system on Afghanistan, a presidential system in a country with more than a dozen ethnicities and hundreds of tribal loyalties. And this is precisely the problem with the US. They think one size fits all. Their democracy fits all societies. Their system fits all peoples. But democracy does not work that way. So this prophesied collapse of American democracy is karma. Plain and simple. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.